Welcome to Three Crosses Farrier Company, and today we've got a really interesting case. So this horse, when I arrived at the barn, is exhibiting lameness specifically on that white leg on the right hind, and they weren't really sure what had gone on. They thought maybe he'd hurt himself in the pasture. One of the 4-H leaders had said maybe one of the shoes was pressing on his frog. And so what I'm demonstrating to the client here is that the shoe is not pressing on the frog. If anything, this is a pretty tight fit, but it's not tight to the point that it doesn't fit him. And we're at 8 weeks here. So this shoe is ready to be replaced and removed. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check for any sensitivity throughout the hoof. These are what we call hoof testers. I use them quite a bit, and they're probably the quickest and easiest way to diagnose if there's something really simple going on in the hoof. So in this case, this horse has been super sensitive in the past because he had a infection in his center sulcus. That's the little crack running right up the middle of the frog. And we have been treating him with groom's hand thrush solution, which is a bacteria killing spray on. Now what I'm doing here, I was pretty sure this wasn't the issue, but I do check for it, see if there was any hollowness, if I could hear any hollowness, something that maybe there was a bacteria infection somewhere up there that I didn't know about, and it'll sound a little different if I tap it. I actually saw another farrier do this, and I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. So I added it to my routine. Again, I'm going to test. I'm looking for his reaction to see if there's anything that's hurting him, if he's sensitive in the frogs. I was fairly certain at this point that this wasn't the case, but I like to be thorough. And I was really checking that frog because he has shown sensitivity there before. Now there I'm just grabbing the heels and seeing what I can do. When I put shoes on him the last time, the foot could flex from side to side. That's how deep that infection went into the center sulcus. So I wasn't sure whether that's what was going on here or if something else was going on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check for heat. And this is another quick, simple test. The other thing that I check, and you can't see it here, I check that distal pulse down there to see if it's pounding. That can be an indication of founder. It's not always an indication, but it's a fairly good indication sometimes. This horse doesn't have any of the other signs, so I was pretty sure that wasn't it either. But you want to cover all your bases. And you can see how far up the purple goes. You really don't want to get it into the hairline because it's toxic, but they must have missed a little bit, so it's not a huge deal. But you can see where that crack is running up. It's so much better than it was. Now, he was sensitive when I grabbed this right above the fetlock joint there. And so I wasn't sure if that could be something going on, if maybe it's strained a tendon. I've seen that before where they'll be super sensitive. They'll have a soft tissue injury and be super upset about it. Long story short, that is not what happened. We actually ended up sending him to Wazoo Veterinary Hospital that's in Pullman, Washington. It's a teaching hospital for the University of Washington. Or, excuse me, Washington State University, Wazoo. They did a lameness workup on him, and it turned out that he has some arthritis, some significant arthritis, and they ended up injecting his hocks. He was doing much, much better when he came to me about a week later, 2 weeks later, after he got his full vet workup and everything. But what the vet wanted and what I thought was a good idea was to get him shod with some extra support in the back end. Now the shoes that I had on him previously were fit really tight. And I do that because in the country that we live in, most of these horses are in turnout, and they're usually out in the mud or the dirt or whatever. And if you fit them super full like I would in a stall horse or something of that nature, then you start to have issues. So I fit most of my horses tighter than I would probably like, but if I don't fit them that tight, in 2 weeks they'll have the shoe pulled off. So in this case, we don't have another choice. So he's going to get a wider fit shoe, and if he has to wear bell boots or something of that nature, then he has to wear bell boots. And he's on stall rest at the moment as well after having his hocks injected. I'd like to point out right here, see the color of the hoof, and you can see me knifing it out. You see that yellowish color? That means that that's not live tissue. It'll get whiter and kind of a milkier color. And a lot of people ask, how do I know how far to go? And this is one of the indications. I'm watching the color and texture of that hoof wall. Now you'll notice I didn't go all the way down, and one of the reasons I didn't is it is dry and it is rocky where we live. If you take that horse down super short, you're most likely going to have a lame horse. So I would rather leave 1/8 of an inch of hoof and have that little bit of insurance than take him super short and have to figure out putting pads on him 2 weeks later. This is actually kind of fun for me. I really enjoy working with vets. Some farriers don't, and understandably so. Sometimes vets can be hard to work with, as can some farriers, but I like learning and I like difficulty and I like having to figure it out. So it's fun to work with someone else who's doing the same thing and come together and figure out a solution to fix the horse. Super important that we keep that rasp nice and flat, same with the nip line. And this is a brand new rasp here. You can tell by just the way it's cutting it, just effortlessly pulling hoof off. I think one of my favorite things in the world is to break out a new rasp. Now here I'm going to do the trailers. Now I checked there to make sure that I have the right side for the trailer. Sometimes I have been known to make mistakes, as I did in one of my previous videos. Now what I'm going to do is a trailer is going to bend a little bit further out. It's going to be at an angle to the first nail hole. The extension, heel extension, is a little different, and that will go in a straight line with the first nail hole, if done correctly. Now you'll notice I bent it, and that's so that I can pound, so that I can beat it with my hammer without the other branch getting in the way. I've tried doing them different ways, and this is probably my favorite way to build trailers, is to bend one branch out of the way, lean it up against the anvil, hit it, and then do the other side by bending the branch out of the way for the other side. Now what I'm doing here is I'm working that shoe flat. I need to get the shoe flat so when I go to burn this shoe on, it doesn't have any odd discrepancies, because when you burn the shoe on, if the shoe's not flat, then the foot's not going to be flat, and you create a whole nother bunch of problems for yourself. This anvil, by the way, is my new Future 3, and I love this anvil. It's half aluminum, half steel. It takes all the ring out of the anvil that you would normally have, and I love it. What you can't see in the video, I'm checking level, so I'm picking the shoe up and I'm looking at it from heel to heel to see how level it is. And that should about do it. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, for some reason in the video I didn't get the full burn here. I happen to love burning a shoe on. I just think it makes you more of a man. Not sure if that's really the case, but that's the story I'm going with. Now here you're going to watch me knife. What I'm doing is once I burn the shoe on, I don't want any sole pressure. So you can see where the burn has moved into the sole and is not just exclusively in the hoof wall and laminae. And we don't want that, so we're going to take our knife and just knife that out just a little bit so that shoe is not resting on the sole, which can create sole pressure, which then can create lameness, which then can create a very unhappy client. And unhappy horseshoer, we don't want them to be lame, we want them to be good. Now you can see the angle, see that trailer sitting right there, you can see it's angled at that kind of almost in line with that nail hole on the medial side, the inside of the shoe. And then you can see the medial side heel is almost directly in a straight line with the first nail hole on the medial side. when driving your nails, one side of the nail is beveled and the other side is straight. So if you look at the nail really close as we're driving it here, you'll notice that one side's straight and one side has a bit of a curve to it. And this is by design, so it causes that nail to move out, going away from the inside of the hoof. If you get the nail pointed in the wrong direction or flipped around, it will actually drive in to the hoof wall. And unfortunately, I have made that mistake in the past. And you have to be aware of that. And sometimes, especially if you're tired, it's easy to make mistakes. So we have to be really careful as farriers of what we're doing and paying attention all the time. I don't think people realize how much goes into shoeing horses. Now what I'm doing is I'm using my fingers to feel that nail as it pops out and make sure it pops out. This is called blocking. Some farriers do it, some don't. I like to do it. I think it seats the nails and it seats that shoe a little better. Some guys don't find it necessary to do that, and I'm not one of those, but it works for them. Now, in a couple of videos, I've had people comment about my finish work, how I could improve it, and I am always trying to improve my finish work. I do not use a sander or a buffer wheel, and the reason is that if you use a buffer wheel all the way up the hoof line, which it looks super pretty when you're done all, sanded up and smooth, it does narrow the hoof wall over time. And with a lot of these quarter horses, we just don't have a lot of hoof wall to begin with, and so I don't. I also get the question why I don't use power tools like they do on the cow videos. Again, I'm not opposed to power tools, especially in the trim scenario, like on your bigger horses or something that's super, super long. But unfortunately, I don't have the horse in a controlled stalk with its foot holding still with some kind of latch system or squeeze. I have to do this all on the horse's basically good behavior. And if he doesn't decide he wants to behave, and a lot of horses don't like the sound of the grinder, and so I've just gotten where I don't use it very much. Not that they can't get used to it, I just had horses that... So that should just about wrap up the right foot. Let's go over and work on the left foot. This is actually one of the longer YouTube videos that I've done. Let me know what you think. Do you like the longer format with the 2 feet, or do you like it a little shorter? Now again, when I'm pulling these shoes, my motion is down and to the inside. I don't want to twist that foot at all to the outside. And since he's already a little sore in the hocks, you have to be kind of careful what you do. Some horses are really sensitive when we're pulling a shoe. There we have it. I have had several people ask me questions about my scar there, which you can see on full display. So I'll tell you all the story while we're getting this foot cleaned up. So 2 years ago, I was hanging out at the house and I got a coconut and decided I was going to open it with a knife. And I made a mistake and the knife slipped and I ended up with 5 or 6 stitches. Wasn't a big deal. Took a week off, went back to work, was pulling shoes on a horse, and it was super dry, super hard. Went to jerk the shoe, and the tendon snapped. The one that makes your thumb bend snapped, and then another one of your extra tendons that makes you be able to move your wrist. And I ended up sitting basically around for about 6 months. I had 3 months of where I wasn't allowed to do much of anything and was in a brace, and then started getting to do a little bit here and there, kind of got to start back to work, but it was probably all of 6 months before I went back to work full time. And it was definitely one of the hardest times I've had, but it was actually good too, because I think I needed a break, and it just gave me a real appreciation for being able to go to work and do the things we love. So that's my little story. for all the people that have asked the question. Now again, I'm working that foot down into where I don't want to go super short on this horse. I want to kind of stay, not remove all the callus and everything, and have a little extra hoof there. So then you can see that yellow. You can see towards the commissure back where the bar is, that's the portion of the foot. So your commissure is the portion, that dark line between the frog and the sole. That's your commissure. And then beyond that is your sole and bar sits right on the edge of the commissure. And you can see it's a little wider right there off the bar. And so that's a little bit shorter there, almost down to the live tissue. Again, when you're running your nippers, you will save yourself so much time and energy if you run them flat. If you can learn to run your nippers in a flat line from heel to heel, you will do less work in the long run. I do have to say, I'm going to say it again, I love the fact of I love a new rasp. It just grates that like a cheese grater. It's just one of the best feelings in the whole wide world. Now, I'm super excited to tell you a little bit about this as well. So if you look, you'll see my hoof stand there. And that's my old hoof stand. And we recently got sponsored by Hoof It. And they are the ones that make my hoof stand. And we got a new one. So that will be in our new videos. Now, as I explained earlier, we're going to bend the lateral side. The outside branch is going to be at an angle to the nail hole, and then the medial side will be almost in line with the first nail hole. So the outside lateral branch will be at an angle, almost an angle to that medial side nail hole, and an angle to obviously the lateral side nail hole, and then the medial heel will be in a straight line. Why are we doing this? Because some people have asked the question. The reason that we are trailering these is that what happens is that shoe starts to wrap around the heel of the horse, and it starts to close that back portion of the hoof. So the heels become narrower and narrower because of the shoe. And it actually causes drag as well. It doesn't allow the foot to clean out, gets mud and gunk all built up in there. And so what we're going to do by trailering this horse and extending the heels is open that foot up so it'll be where it's supposed to be. The heels will be where they need to be, but we will gain some extension, which will support the hock and the fetlock joint and all the other important tissues and ligaments and muscles and tendons up that hoof.
Yep.
This is actually one of my favorite ways to burn one on. I have a couple of different ways to do it, but I really like this method where you have the tongs with just the two sides. When you're burning the shoe on, it's super important that you don't put too much pressure one side to the other or one heel to the other, because you can burn it. You can burn that side too much and then it won't be level. So there's a lot going on when we're doing this. Again, we're relieving sole pressure, so when we put that shoe on, nothing touches, so we don't get a bunch of sole pressure. You can kind of see the funny discoloration when you burn a shoe on. It looks different than it would if you just cold banged a shoe on. Again, you can see the heel, that the medial side, the inside, is straight in line with the nail hole on the medial side, and the lateral side is at an angle. This one's not quite as angled as the first one that I did. now that I look at it. I can critique my own shoeing. That's the hard part about watching my own videos, is that I can sit there and go, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done this better, I could have changed the fit a little bit here. And honestly, that's what you should do. Your work is never perfect. You're doing your best to make every set of shoes better than your last. Some days you're like, God, that one wasn't quite what I wanted, but it's what I got, and I'm going to do better next time. So as long as you go into it with a humble attitude, I think you can be successful. You have to have some skill, but you need to be humble. And I have a hashtag that I use a lot on Instagram, and it's called hashtag stay humble. And I think that's super important. No matter what you're doing, you don't know everything. The day you think you know everything, you better quit. I'm using a Delta Slim Blade here, and they're my go-to nails. They're what I've used most. I've used a Capwell nail as well, but I didn't have a lot of luck with them. I had some failures, and I preferred this nail to this Delta to the Capwell. You'll notice he's getting a little impatient with me here and doesn't really want to hold his foot there. Part of that was we had him standing up, and he needed a little bit of a break, and so we let him have the foot back for a minute, and then tried it again, and he did much better. Now again, like I said, some guys don't do this portion, but I do. I like to block my nails. This kind of sets them down. Some guys will do where they'll bend them down, rasp it, and then clinch them. And that shoe is on there now. Now, when you're driving your nails, you strive for a straight nail line, where all the nails are about the same height, maybe slightly descending towards the heel nail. The front nail should be slightly higher than the heel nail. And these ones actually look pretty good, all things considered. I'm really happy with that nail line. Again, we're going for a good finish job, like I started to talk about earlier. Finish shows that you cared about your work. Could I just rasp around the edge and clinch the nails and the shoe'd be fine? And probably from a functional standpoint, it's just as good. But I think you should take pride in your work, and so I strive to be better, and I strive to make my shoes look better, and especially, you know, it shows the clients you care. And I do think that it helps the horse. You should have a good finish job. What I'm doing here is called a quarter crease. Just makes that shoe pop, in my opinion. When you're clinching the nails, you want the nails to come down and lay flat against the hoof wall. You don't want to pull them so hard that you pull them through the hoof wall either. That can create a lot of problems for you as well. Now, I use 3 different rasps. I have a small handled rasp that's just smooth. I have a large handled rasp, and then I have a small handled rasp that's got gnarling on it, or checkering. I don't know exactly what the right word is. And the checkered handled one is for trimming. The small handled is for finish work, and then the last one's for rasping on nails and things. The big handled one. And there you go. He's moving so much better than he was the other day. The Hawk injections have helped him so much. I think these shoes are going to make his life so much better. And that should about do it for today. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you have any requests or things you want to know, let us know.